Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for the nice intro. I'm in California, so it's pretty early this morning. We'll see how that goes. So again, I'm Eric Bryant, the CRO and co-founder of OpperVent. We work with influencers on many different ways around gaming, whether it's Twitch or YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all kinds of different platforms. And I want to talk a little bit about how to put them into part of your ad creative and not necessarily having influencers, just generate installs. By first kind of going in that, I wanted to explain a little bit about, and these videos, most of these videos will not have sound, so they're just going to be playing in the background. But I wanted to go into a little bit about UGC, and I'm sure all of you already know a lot about user-generated content. It's content that's created by people, not necessarily the brands themselves. And just some stats around it. Obviously, it's highly engaging and helps with the brand. So there's an 85% greater trust in this type of content versus brand content. There's a 28% stronger brand engagement with UGC. Videos on YouTube for UGC get 10 times the amount of views versus videos that are coming straight from the brands. And 86% of millennials say that user-generated content is a good indicator of the quality of a brand. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about the traditional way of working with influencers. So most people on here probably know this already, but kind of wanted to go through this particular example. So usually influencers are here to generate installs, not really content. So they're maybe putting in some content on a YouTube video or even streaming the game on Twitch. And the ways to go about it are usually you would contact an agency that works with influencers, sign some contracts, and you may not have an exact workflow, so you may not have direct contact with this influencer. You may not know when they're working on their video or when the video is being edited, because most influencers will not edit their own videos. You also have to rely on the influencers. So you may have worked with an influencer who do they put in the correct tracking link? Do they have a call to action? And are they doing all the work that they were asked to do correctly? Is there an approval flow, right? Also, did you guys give them an exact script, or did you kind of let them create their own authentic message? So on the right side, you can see here's an example I took. My son loves Minecraft, so this is a Minecraft influencer, and he's doing an ad for Monster Legends. And I tried to capture it, but it's probably too small. At the bottom, you can see it. This is at the 2-minute mark out of a 30-minute video. So it's just a very short 30-second kind of ad. Hey guys, go play this game. The influencer maybe shows himself playing the game, but it's easily known that he's not directly playing the game. And it's just a very small message within here. But there's about almost a third of the people are on a PC. So how do you track those people who are on a PC? At OpperVent, we've actually developed a way where if someone's on a PC, they get redirected to a place to put in their phone number to get a text message of the tracking link. Also, how do you measure success from some campaign like this? Do you measure it by installs, by ROAS? And how do you know how many organic installs there were? Some of the attribution providers can help with this, but it's always kind of like not exactly known. Also, influencers, especially the ones that are larger, can be very expensive, and they do not like being paid for performance. So it's actually pretty rare to find some of these great influencers to be paid a certain amount per install or a certain amount per some specific event in the game. And it can be very difficult to get a pretty good ROAS out of these campaigns. Just kind of to summarize some of the pros and cons of working with influencers is they can have authentic voice if done correctly. So if you let the influencer kind of put their own creativeness in this and their own style, then it can actually be a pretty authentic voice. Sometimes if you have a very direct script, or the influencer kind of just reads off of something, then it just may not seem very authentic. Also, they could have high engagement. Usually Typically, the smaller they are, the higher engagement they have. So if you're working with someone very large, they can actually have a pretty low engagement at times. There's a story that Dr. Disrespect streamed World of Tanks, and he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have a whole lot of information in advance of how to play the game. He didn't really get much of a chance to play it before he started streaming it, and he looked like he was a little bit lost and only generated a very, very small amount of installs. Some of the cons, they could, like I mentioned before, it could be high costs. The process could be slow. So influencers work on their own time. They have their own schedules. They may have a doctor's appointment when they're supposed to film, and then they may push them back a day or two. Um, and you know, they may not be good with instructions. So you have to have a good way of getting them instructions. And also there's some brand safety concerns. Sometimes if an influencer does something, they could later on, you know, say some racist remarks. And as you know, right now in the US, that could be a very tricky thing to walk around. So that's something that that can be a very difficult thing when working with influencers. Now, just kind of want to introduce IGC. So we call this particular product that we've come up with influencer generated content. And what is influencer generated content? It is content that is also created by a user, but it's typically created by professional content creators. So these are authentic, high performance video ads at scale. And what I mean by scale is we work with thousands of influencers all around the world. The influencers are actually used as actors. They're usually paid for their reach. Like in the examples I gave before, if you want an influencer to post a link or to generate installs, that is usually paid particularly based on their reach. But in these cases, if you just have them creating content and they're not going to post this content, they don't post it to YouTube, they don't stream the game, and they don't post to Twitter or anything like that. They're creating content on their own time. So the reach and audience doesn't matter. That puts pretty much everyone on the same playing field here, whether they're small, medium, or large. We do have profiles of tons of influencers. So we have data on a lot of these influencers through third-party auths. That means that we know what games they're paying or they bought on Steam. We know what games they're watching or what they're streaming on Twitch. We know their basic interests. We know their looks. And if certain influencers are working very well for the ad creative, then we can get more that look like them. And the game devs or the advertisers will set particular guidelines. These guidelines could be pretty basic, and letting the influencers kind of be creative on what kind of content they want to show around those basic guidelines. As I mentioned before, they're recording this offline, and a video ad is created from their recording of themselves playing the game. And what problems does IGC solve? If it's done an authentic way, if the influencer is doing it very authentically and they're showing real gameplay of them playing, it can show an increase in IPM, installs per mil, and also your return on ad spend. We've been seeing this a lot with games and non-games. So it also diversifies the creative mix. So I know probably everybody since last year has a playable ad. They've had gameplay ads. They've had ads that have animation or CGI. We believe that we're seeing a big trend this year about having humans or having influencers in ads. It can be very cost effective or very cost efficient. So what that means is that instead of going to an agency, getting a single influencer for $10,000, you can get an influencer, or you can get 10 influencers for the amount of $10,000. So you can try and test different influencers to see what works best. It's also multi-language, multicultural. Like I said, we have influencers all around the world, and influencers, you know, live in different locations. In this case, on the right here, for A Vac in Life, this influencer is they're talking in Spanish. Their app is in Spanish, and this is kind of like geared towards areas that speak Spanish. There's also a fast turnaround. So because these influencers are usually on the smaller to medium-sized end, they can turn these around usually in a few days, or, you know, the next weekend they'll have the content ready. And there's also a lot of different ways to optimize these types of ads. Moving on, just want to briefly talk a little bit about TikTok and Snapchat. So as you know, these platforms are kind of getting a lot more talk, and it sounds like from us talking to a lot of our gaming clients and also with TikTok, a lot of people are trying to find some type of success on TikTok and Snapchat. But these platforms are very influencer or human driven platforms. And as you can see on the right, the average engagement rate for TikTok is much higher than Twitter and a pretty good amount higher than Instagram. You can see that it tails off a little bit, but it still stays pretty high depending on if they're small to large. And you guys probably already know this, but just to kind of recap on some TikTok stats, there's 800 million monthly active users. 90% of them use the app every single day, and users spend about 52 minutes on average in the app per day. So these are highly engaged users. They're using the app a lot. So how do you get, how do you get traction? How do you get a good enough, a reasonable enough CPI where you can advertise on TikTok and Snapchat? It's difficult. You can't just throw your current creatives onto TikTok or Snapchat and generate a lot of installs. Maybe some of you have, but a lot of people we talk to have a hard time getting some traction there. So we have seen some pretty good success, and I wanted to kind of go in a success story here. I know this is not a game, but this is an app we worked with called Funimate, which is a video editing app. And I just wanted to play a couple short ads here. But while they play, or not while they play, but before they play, I'll explain that the video ad on the left, this previous video ad, is an ad they were running before they started running our IGC video ad, which is on the right here. So I'm going to play this particular ad they were running previously, and this is not an IGC ad. So it's a great high quality ad, very catchy music, and that's what they had previously. When they started using our ad, the CTRs increased by 70% and the CPI decreased by 50%. So I'll show you the IGC ad that we made them.
This is this really cool app called Funimate, where you can edit videos. Move your finger wherever you want the special effect to be. Let's see how the timing of this song is. Oh my gosh, this song is like working perfectly.
So this influencer had used their creativity to make this ad, and it was kind of an interesting one to make because it was like an inception of an ad. They had to create a video on their device, edit that video using the device, but record themselves editing, and then we edited that recording. So, but it was a pretty unique ad and helped them generate a lot more installs for their game by decreasing the CPI, or not the game, but their app by decreasing the CPI. So there's a couple more things here. One thing I wanted to go over is some of the different concepts and elements. And I know there's a lot of kind of words on here, but you can have many different concepts and elements in these particular IGC ads. Like I mentioned before, the influencers will follow the guidelines set by the game dev. So they shouldn't be very scripted or very exact. They should allow for some creativity. So for example, for Angry Birds 2, they could say, Rovio could say, hey, why don't you focus on the 2 new birds that we have? Or why don't you, focus on these specific things for the app? And the influencer will play the game for a while and show a lot of content around those guidelines. So those kind of are different concepts. There's also, hey, why don't we test different elements? So there's different elements which are kind of smaller parts, different backgrounds to be put on here. You can see kind of this background on this example works pretty well for the background that is showing in her gameplay. Different camera effects or different animations, those can be different elements to test. So maybe there's kind of like a shaking or a zooming in camera effect. Also, using a hand to show what is touched on the screen. So this is a very popular thing, obviously, for other types of ads. And these are things that we're testing with IGC, is having, a hand showing very clearly what they're touching. And also different edit styles. So if this particular ad should be more informative, like a tutorial type of ad, should there be humor? Obviously, this one kind of went for the humor area, or should it be competitive? Do you want kind of a PvP? Do you want two influencers doing a PvP against each other? Or, kind of like a noob versus pro type of effect. So lastly, I got one more slide here, and I'm just going to quickly go through a few more examples here of IGC. Now there's a short 15-second ad, and then there's two 30-second ads here. So I'm just going to play these so you guys can see and hear these. And I hope it plays decent enough so you can get an idea of it.
I've been actually working on this level for days. Here we go. All right. Bomb took care of it. Just like rock, paper, scissors. Bomb wins. Facts.
So you can see some basic animations. Here's another example.
Gotta get all these things together. Oh my gosh, there's so many ingredients. Hey there, I'm Zavrikis, and today we are gonna be playing Kitchen Scramble 2. This is a lot harder than it looks. Get in the zone, the noodle zone. Okay, so let's upgrade our ingredients, upgrade the cilantro and the cheese and the taco shells. No, I burnt the beans. We'll get this next time. We're just losing all of our customers right now, which is not a good thing. But hey, we got the level. Yay!
So a few things in that one. She actually cosplayed as the main character in the game. She was creative. She did her own singing, like a little bit of singing during the game. And she had some fail moments, which can always be very attractive in, seeing a human not be perfect. For this kind of reason, this is why I watch Dr. Disrespect and some other streamers, to see them kind of fail or rage or, have these sort of moments where they're not perfect. And here's the last one.
I just play one of my favorite apps for 2 minutes and I have $5 towards Amazon. If you like playing mobile games and you play them a lot, because chances are you do, I have something for you to check out. Check out an app called Rewarded Play, where you can play some of your favorite games and actually be rewarded. So you literally just tap it, installs it directly from the Google Play Store for you, and then it monitors how long you play it. And the longer you play it, the more credits you get for that day, which go towards your rewards. That easy. So you might as well work towards something that is like giving a little gift to yourself.
So you can see this one did have subtitles and was more kind of explanatory of a video. So that was it for the slides. I just have a website, and I believe someone will put this website in there for more information and some more examples. But I do want to end on one quick note, is that for this month, if anybody puts in an order for these, for this type of creative for this month, we'll actually double that order. So for example, if someone would like, 10K worth of videos, we'll actually double that to 20K spend. So if anybody has any questions or wants to know more information, feel free to email me or go to the website.
Wow, Eric, that was brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for sharing so much there. That was really good. There's a load of great stuff, and you got video working faultlessly in Zoom. So I'm my tech team is going to be on asking a question afterwards as well, because we've had a lot of problems with this. But that was really good. And we've got loads of questions, and we've got about sort of 8-10 minutes. So if you're okay, I'm going to try and run through some of them with you.
Sure, I'll try to be as succinct as Kieran. So yeah, I know he was great at answering the questions.
He was very good, and thank you again for being up at like God o'clock in the morning. I didn't realize that we should have afternoon sessions as well, but fair enough.
It's fine. It's 4 o'clock. I know I've got a panel later, so I may catch some more sleep. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. All right. Well, you're very late anyway. So first question is how to track installs with MMPs like Tenjin when working with influencers? I guess generally is a question about tracking results is always a kind of challenge with kind of alternative marketing things.
Right. So with usually with working with influencers, as I mentioned, it's a little bit different than IGC. So IGC, the influencers don't post anything. They're literally giving the content, or we're giving the ad content like the 30-second ads, 15-second ads to the advertiser to put on Facebook or Google. But I'll still answer the question, sorry. So with influencers, they do track fine. So we've done many campaigns on Twitch and YouTube where we take those links and we put them there. But we usually have a website that checks what device the user's on. If the user is watching it on Twitch or YouTube on their phone or mobile device, it actually will redirect perfectly just fine. It does use either the referrer ID like for Google, or it uses fingerprint tracking, so it can lose some attribution, but it does work pretty well.
Okay, and I guess related to that is I've got some questions here about how CPI or ROAS compares to traditional UA. Is there I know it's different. Is it comparable? Is it just much more variable in terms of impact?
So I'm guessing this is for if you're working directly with influencers and not IGC. So with, when you're working with influencers, the CPIs can be very high because they're having to create content and post it. So you can expect a much higher CPI. With ROAS, however, if you've got the right influencers and got the right game, the ROAS could be very reasonable. But that could differ. So on the flip side, if you're using these ads in your normal channels like Facebook and Google and those things, and you're not having the influencer post anything, obviously the ROAS is kind of what you're usually doing, and it just depends on the IPMs that you're getting with these types of ads.
Yeah. Okay. There's loads more questions. We'll go to the named ones. I'm anonymous here. So Windsor, it's a great name. Windsor Kaskendi. I've noticed the middle ground where UGC may end up being popular, high quality, and helpful before being signal boosted by the game publisher. How do you recommend we approach selecting cases, or when providing resources or access to generate itself as a subset of UGC? I understand about 80% of that. I'm hoping that the rest of it is clear.
Yeah, so I think that I'm only understand a little bit of it too. So how do you recommend that we approach selecting cases or when providing resources or access for this to generate itself? So there's a couple things here I'll try to answer very quickly so we can get to some of the other questions. But when working with influencers, some people want to work with them like very directly, so you can continue working with them. Some usually work with influencers where it's just like a beginning of a campaign and you work with them and they stop and there's no real tail end to it. Yeah. But I would recommend that you continuously work. If you're working with influencers right now or want to, you continuously work with them. Now for IGC, we have like loads of influencers that work for IGC. So I would recommend that you can work with influencers and find the right ones. And once you've found these right ones, you can find ones that look like them, or you can keep going back to the same one. Maybe they speak kind of like the same language as your users, and you keep going back to them. And that's what we're seeing too, is like, hey, this video worked really well. We think this person's perfect for our audience. Let's kind of keep going back to him. Now, if I didn't answer that correctly, feel free to message me. Sorry about that.
No, yeah, exactly. Anybody, because this is quite specialist stuff. So try and find Eric in Discord or meet some match afterwards. So another question here, Eric, great panel. Earlier you said influencers essentially work as actors to promote your product. Does this not affect the authenticity you want if it's clear the content is scripted? And I guess I was thinking about this myself as well, because you raised a few different issues, like what's the balance between control and authenticity? Because obviously on one hand, you can go completely rogue and just go, I don't usually play these games because they're crappy. I do something else. And you go, well, that's 20K blown away. What's the usual balance? I mean, is there a way of you can get a bit of both?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's why we're kind of experts in spaces. We've been working with Twitch influencers for years, and it doesn't matter if they're Twitch or YouTube. Influencers are very unique people, and they create great content. So there is kind of a balance. You do not want to give them, hey, can you say these exact words, or can you say this exact term? Now, there may be some keywords, but what you do want is you do want them to be creative in their own ways. And a lot of these influencers, they don't even have their own like creative team or editor themselves. I mean, they don't edit themselves. So you need to allow them to be creative. So you give them some basic guidelines, and that's kind of what I usually call it, is basic guidelines. And we have some advertisers that give pretty specific ones, but we make sure they have enough content that we can cut very authentic pieces. But there is a big difference between authentic and scripted. And hopefully in my examples, you can see how authentic it is. But you've probably seen some examples that there's just very scripted, or they're just not wanting to do this, especially the larger guys on YouTube. They're not very keen on these mobile gaming sponsorships. So they can make it, I mean, it's very difficult for them to make it authentic sometimes.
I guess that's another question, really. Something we looked at previous talks and in our media and stuff about the balance between the big guys, the super influencers, and the kind of the approach of just going broadly, load of micro influencers. You know, for mobile where it's so data driven as well, is there kind of broader micro influencer sort of a strategy and more? You know, is that just going to be more comfortable for them, do you think, because it's more closer to what they're usually doing in terms of the UA and marketing?
Yeah, micro influencers are actually a good way because they produce pretty much just as good content as the bigger guys. The bigger guys have these huge sponsorships, and their communities are not as reactive, or not as, you know, nice. So if you see like Ninja, I know you mentioned Fortnite, Ninja, you know, a lot of people be like, oh, he's a sellout. But then you get these small, medium-sized guys who are loving that they're getting these kind of sponsorships, or that they're getting to do these ads. We had someone just yesterday say, hey, my friend just saw me in an ad like on Facebook or something like that. So they are very authentic, and we have yet to prove out that with like running these types of IGC ads on Facebook or Google, if it's someone who's very well known, you know, well, you can go to Ninja and you can go to, you know, Dr. Disrespect or Shroud or whomever, but it's going to be very, very costly. And we actually have used pretty large people sometimes in IGC, and we don't see a huge effect that these large influencers have of it, just because so many people are viewing that out on Facebook that the chances are very small that someone is like, oh, it's Ninja, I'm going to download this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, there's a question about Facebook here saying, how can influencer marketing work when Facebook and other channels are doubling down on organic reach? I mean, that's a challenge for the entire industry, I guess. But you know, clearly, I'd answer that you need a mix, right? If one thing worked, we'd all do one thing.
Yeah, it's a very difficult challenge to get to is organic reach, and we've done different campaigns on different platforms, like not on Facebook at the moment, but on YouTube and Twitch. And we have kind of different ways to calculate it. Also, a lot of these attribution providers are pretty good at, you know, setting aside times like, okay, this person went live between like 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. with the content. So did you see kind of an influx of installs and that sort of thing? But as for Facebook, I'm not too sure about that.
Okay, I'm going to try and squeeze in a couple of very quick ones, and we'll
Sure.
roll on. You got up so early. I think you should have as many questions as you want.
Sorry.
So no. You should, I'm sorry to get you up so early. I've got a question about pricing. You know, I think you mentioned a few sort of ranges earlier, but what is typical pricing? Are there any special plans for small developers, for indies? Is there what's the meaningful campaign?
Yeah, it's so usually the pricing is it depends on how many are purchased, and depends on languages and a couple other things. But they could be around $1,000 per influencer. And what we usually do is we usually get the influencer to play a pretty good amount of the game, and then we work with the advertiser on what concepts they want, and then we deliver up to 6 deliverables that could be different lengths or different aspect ratios. But it's kind of like, hey, which concept do you want to use for this influencer? And so that's why we kind of say like, hey, don't just try one video, because, you know, like I've seen, you know, Brian from Consumer Acquisition and so many other people, you know, one ad going up against your other ads, it's going to be difficult, you know, tricky to get to work. Plus, you want to understand, do certain people speak to your audience better? So it's good to test, and the more you test, the price goes down. So
okay, fair enough. Final two questions, or final quick questions. What I've been asked twice. What is your experience with noob versus pro ads? I think that's more. I think that's more of an advertising question than an influencer one. But.
So yeah, so I can understand this one. There's a lot of noob versus pro out there. We are actually just now trying this particular concept. It's pretty easy because you usually show gameplay of 2 different people. Now you can show a gameplay and camera of 2 different people. And well, usually sometimes they'll put like a little small picture of a person, but they're not actually playing the game, and you can actually see that. But it's actually been very effective in more casual titles. And we're going to be trying this with some upcoming advertisers that we just signed on board. So I think that it's going to be pretty effective, but I don't have the data just yet.
Cool. Final question from Jackie. I'm sorry, everybody else will have to chase Eric up for us. Is with IGC targeting, how does this work region by region?
So what we can do is just let me know what languages you'd like, and even, you know, a specific thing like, oh, I like Brazilian Portuguese versus Portuguese, and we will send over a few influencers or however many we need to of that particular culture or language. And when we send those over, then you guys can take a look at what they look like and their interests and things, and choose them based on that. But we have influencers that speak all the major languages, even you know, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, even in Asia, but all the major European languages.
Okay, I'm probably going to have to ask. I don't know what you're up to now. If you're still around, either now or later, people can reach out to Eric over Meet to Match or Discord. Their questions going to have to end at some point. You're very popular as people asking you questions. That's good. So whether he might be getting some sleep right now, but at some point he'll be on Discord asking questions. But thank you so much for that, Eric. That was really great insight there. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much.
I'm afraid you don't get real.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I'll be back for the panel in a bit. I'll try to hop in a Discord or, you know, check my emails in a little bit as well.
Remember, double the value is offering. Don't let that.
Yeah, double the value. Reference the show, double the value, and we'd love to get some videos for everyone. So
cool, awesome. All right, thank you very much.